All right, good morning, everyone. Sorry about our computers were kicking us off, so I apologize for the issues, but good morning. So welcome to our latest installment of Shelter's Community Education Series, Understanding the McKinney-Vento Act. My name is Maria Brower. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Senior Director of Development at Shelter, Inc. I'd like to get a few housekeeping items out of the way before we get started. First of all of our attendees have been muted. If you need assistance or you have a question, the chat feature has been disabled. And so you will want to use the Q&A feature and we can address your needs as soon as possible. We also have an event helpline. You can text that number 847-348-9240. This webinar is being recorded and we will send you a link with the recording in a couple of days. We will also email the CEU certificates. This webinar is one continuing education unit. I know many of you have been on our webinars before, but for those of you who are new, since 1975, Shelter's mission has been to end the cycle of abuse by providing a comprehensive network of support to children, their families, and our community to create safe, healthy, and nurturing homes. It's also important for us to acknowledge that our agency is located on the unceded ancestral lands of Indigenous tribes, such as the Council of Three Fires, comprised of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, as well as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, Fox, Kickapoo, and Illinois nations. Colonialism is ongoing, and we need to understand and acknowledge our history and our place within it. As an agency, Shelter, Inc. is committed to providing safe, inclusive, and supportive resources for youth and families from all backgrounds and identities. We have 7 programs with a focus on our mission: a Healthy Families Child Abuse Prevention Program, a foster care program, 2 emergency group homes for youths ages 11 to 17, a transitional living program for 17 to 21-year-olds who are identified as male at birth, a youth experiencing homelessness program for youth ages 14 to 24, our new clinical program providing free mental health therapy to children, and Shelter's Hotline and Community Outreach and Education Program. I'm so grateful that you're all here with us today because Arlington Heights, Wheeling, and Palatine have the largest population of students experiencing homelessness, second only to the city of Chicago. So thank you for sharing our vision that all children grow up in safe and loving homes. So I would like to introduce our first presenter today, Dr. Thomas Bookler. Dr. Bookler has served as a McKinney-Vento Regional Educational Liaison for over 17 years. In this role, he has been an advocate for the implementation of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act for both the school districts and families. He also has been instrumental on advocacy and legislation to help homeless families return to stable housing. Every year, he provides backpacks and school supplies to thousands of McKinney-Vento students in suburban Cook County and the Collier counties. He is also working with early childhood programs and higher education to ensure that the playing field level is level for all youth that have faced homelessness. Tom is also available to offer professional development to staff, both in the school districts and within homeless agencies throughout the region. And I've worked with Tom. He's wonderful. So we're so happy to have him here today. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, gang. How are you? I am trying to get to the screen share, but it looks like the host has disabled participation from screen sharing. Any way I can get back on?
Go ahead. I have it. You should be all set.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It looks like it's good. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. I am very, very happy to be here today and to be able to participate in this program. Let me move this from the top so I can go ahead and start my slideshow here. There we go. All right. So, as Maria said, the biggest focus of the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Act is to remove all barriers. When we think of being in a school district through any of our states that's a public school, we know that it's a free public education. However, we know in the long run, especially those of you that are parents, school is not free. There's a lot of hidden costs in there. There's a lot of barriers that our children have that are caught up in a homeless situation. It can be anything from having the clothing to be able to wear to get to school, the food to help them survive. It can also be issues with transporting them and getting them to school each day. And of course, there's the book fees, there's the hot dog days, there's all the other expenses that are kind of hidden into our school systems. And that's what we are going to talk a little bit about today. So one of the things, the impact of COVID-19 has made a big impact on the jobs, the health and housing, and it's leaving more families homeless or at risk of homelessness. As a result, more students are expected to be eligible for McKinney-Vento services. However, the number of students identified, surprisingly, are less than previous years. So today we're going to be exploring the reasons why so many have fallen through the cracks and how we can better identify and support youth that are in temporary living situations. And that's a big piece that we need all of your help for, both in the agencies and those of you that are currently in school districts, to be able to help us better identify our students and families, because many of them are hidden. Many of them are hidden because they're ashamed of their living situation. Many are hidden because they don't know what the laws are and they don't know that there's some protections and help for them through the McKinney-Vento grant. There are just numerous reasons. Sometimes it's domestic violence and other issues they may be having with immigration or other barriers to them reporting that they're McKinney-Vento eligible. So the responsibilities and duties that are discussed during this presentation are unchanged from pre-pandemic times, but take on heightened urgency due to the COVID-19 realities. So here's a couple things that I just want everybody to know about. Every school is required to have posters in each building displaying what the McKinney-Vento rights are for families. We have them available both in English and Spanish. We also have them available for any of the shelters that would like them. Just let me know. I will be happy to send them your way. We just received new posters from ISB, so those will be distributed probably after Christmas to every school district to replace the ones that are current in your school district. Another required piece is that there should be McKinney-Vento training of all staff members so that they understand what the needs are for our students. They understand how to identify students that may be McKinney-Vento eligible that may not yet have been identified. And they also need to understand how to provide services for those students and where to connect them up with services with the other agencies and outside the school district. Another thing that changed last year is every school district is required with registration packets or other ways of disseminating information, a fact sheet that talks about McKinney-Vento students and what their rights are. And this is to go to every family. And again, the reason for that is because some families do not know that they're McKinney-Vento eligible, and many times they'll hide the facts that they've lost housing or they've been in a different living situation because they're afraid their kids are not going to be able to attend school anymore at that school district. Another piece that's important that every school district should have on their websites are what the McKinney-Vento rights are, for families and students, local resources that are available in your communities or surrounding your communities to help those families, and also name and contact information of the McKinney-Vento liaison in your school districts, and board policy on McKinney-Vento. Every school district, by the federal law throughout our country, has a McKinney-Vento homeless liaison. Their job and their role is to advocate and support our students that are in a homeless situation. They are to know the law well. They are there to also provide training and support for staff on what the McKinney-Vento rights are for families and students in the school district. If you do not know who the liaison is in your school district, they should be available on the website or in some other document in the school district itself to be able to be someone to contact. If you're in an agency and you're not sure who that person is and you need help with a family or an unaccompanied youth, please let me know and I will refer you to the correct individual. What we're talking about mostly today are the school districts in North Suburban Cook County. I'm the regional liaison, which is different than, obviously, than the school liaison, and I cover 39 school districts from Evanston all the way down through Palatine in that area. So it's a wide range of school districts geographically, and the support is different in all of the school districts based on what the needs are. As Maria earlier said, Wheeling, Palatine, and I forget what the third district was that you mentioned, Maria, are largest groups of families that we have in North Suburban Cook.
That's Wheeling, Palatine, and Arlington Heights.
Arlington Heights, yeah. School District 59, which covers Des Plaines, Arlington Heights, and Elk Grove. So yes, definitely. So that's the story with that. Let me go ahead on a little bit and tell you about a couple resources that are important. And by the way, aside from this being recorded, Maria also has this PowerPoint presentation so that you have it for review, or if you want to reuse it at any point, you are welcome to it. It's there for your help. One of our biggest resources is the Alliance to End Homelessness has a hotline for families. And what this number does, if a family calls when they need assistance with utilities, with rehousing, rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and so on, this is your entry point to be able to get that help. So encourage your families to call this number so that they can get referred out to an agency that will be able to help with it in the area. The other part that I know Maria is familiar with is the Comprehensive-Based Youth Services, CCBYS, which is a hotline number for anyone under 18 that may need help with housing, with anything, along the line of a youth being on their own or a runaway and so on. And their number is 877-870-2663. And more than likely, those individuals, depending on the geographic area, will be referred to, our agency that we're working with today. So the last thing, if you're looking for more resources, I have a page on the North Cook Intermediate Service Center site that has resources specific to your areas and hopefully to your family needs. So this would be in addition to housing and maybe food and maybe medical and so on. So please, mark that page for yourself because it is pretty useful. And I try updating it on a regular basis. And of course, we know that all the websites out there are a moving target. So if you ever see something's not working on there that I might have missed in the last 24 hours, please let me know so that we can go ahead and do an update for that. So moving on, folks, let's talk a little bit about current data. This is really kind of interesting since the beginning of COVID. North Suburban Cook in FY18 had 2,229 individual students that were identified as McKinney-Vento, and that would be from preschool all the way through grade 12. Well, at the end of last year, we were down to 1,919 students. We know that we are underreporting the numbers that we have because certainly during COVID, we saw an increase in the number of students that have lost housing or have been in an unstable position for living arrangements. So it's really important that we look at where these families are. Some of them we may have lost due to the mobility, due to them being on e-learning last year, where they may not have had the technology to be able to stay, or the place to be able to work with the e-learning, or the parental support because the parents may be working. We need to find these students and get them back. If we know of any that we've lost over the last year that we know were not re-enrolled in any school district, please contact me. We have Mary Naima from my office, who I hired under a grant to help us find these students. She will do home visits. She will go through the emergency information that you may have if there is no further information or phone service for the parents, and we will try to ensure that these kids are back in school one place or another. So we do not want to lose anybody, and we know we have with the pandemic, and we know that this is a national issue. The state was down about 20% in numbers. Luckily, we were down less than that, but nationally, we were over 20% down in our numbers and since the beginning of the pandemic. So let's talk about that identification, because this is where the rubber hits the road, you guys, and this is what's really important to us. So let's look at that. Who is McKinney-Vento eligible? There is a handout that you should have, I think should have been emailed to you or will be given to you afterwards, that goes through the same things I'm talking about now. And it's called the Quick Guide to Eligibility. So families or unaccompanied youth who are in emergency shelters or motels, they're pretty easy to identify. We know that. Domestic violence shelters, if they're in cars, campgrounds, or parks, we know they're McKinney-Vento eligible. Or if they're in substandard housing or abandoned buildings, yes, they would be. Here's the one that really creates a gray area for us. And those are families and individuals that are in doubled up situations with friends or relatives. Now, we know that sometimes culturally, families live together. Those would not be the ones that we're looking at. We're looking at families that cannot live anywhere else because they don't have the money, they have bad credit, they have domestic violence. There's, a myriad of reasons that they may be living doubled up. Basically, it's because they cannot live on their own. So this is different from the federal definition. The HUD definition basically includes the ones that I read you before the doubled up statement. But we increased that definition, or included those that are living doubled up, because guess what? They're still homeless. And unfortunately, there's a little disconnect between the two definitions. But realize in schools, if you've got a mom that's going through a divorce, had to move in with her parents in another town, yes, she would be considered McKinney-Vento eligible. If something's happened where families had to suddenly leave from where they're staying due to whatever the reason, and they can't afford to live on their own, they're moving in with somebody else, maybe even in another town, they still are considered McKinney-Vento eligible under our definition of homelessness. The other one too, of course, is transitional housing programs through homeless agencies. Any of the homeless agencies that have families in an apartment, it's a transitional program, so they still would be eligible under McKinney-Vento. Most transitional programs are only 2 years, and what it basically is to have an agency that's helping the family get back on their feet. It may be through counseling, it may be through helping to secure jobs, helping to work with whatever the other issues are in the home. So there will be a case manager working with that family. The other area that we have are migrant youth or refugees. And of course, we have an influx of refugees that are coming in again. And most of those, if they're coming from a refugee agency, they would definitely fall under the McKinney-Vento. Okay, I'm giving you a lot of information and I feel like I'm talking to my screen because I don't see anything else, but I hope this is helpful so far. And we'll go on and talk a little bit about how that eligibility works in a doubled up situation or in any of these situations under McKinney-Vento. And again, that quick guide to eligibility will even have some more definition to it. So let's go on to that. So here, if nothing else you remember today, children who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence and are sharing housing of others due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reasons would be considered McKinney-Vento. Okay, so let's talk about those three pieces: fixed, regular, adequate. So fixed would be, you know, are they always there? Is there a date that they're no longer going to be there? An example would be if someone is living in an apartment and they receive an court-ordered eviction notice, or they are to appear in court for an eviction hearing. They would no longer have a fixed living situation. It has an ending date and they don't know what they're going to do or where else they're going to be. Regular means, are they there every night? Are they there all the time? Many of our McKinney-Vento homeless families are living in different places. And what happens, this kind of crosses the residency line, and some of the school districts think that it's a residency issue, that it's not homelessness. So you have to rethink that and look to see what regular means, you know, and what's really taking place. Many of the families that are living with someone are walking on eggshells. They don't want to have to lose where they're living. They don't want to have to, you know, overstay their welcome. So sometimes they'll live one place for a few days and then they'll go with another relative or friend, possibly in another town or in the city or, you know, in a different suburb for a few days to give the other family a break. And then they'll be bouncing back there. So, you know, that's important to remember. And it's always important when you work with individuals that you're not sure if they're McKinney-Vento or eligible or not, you know, ask them some of these questions. You know, are you always staying at the same place? You know, are things adequate, which is the third piece. So adequate would mean, do you have water? Do you have your own bed? How many are in a room? Sometimes we'll have a family that'll rent a room and they'll say, yeah, I've got a lease, I'm renting a room. Well, who's in that room? 5, 6 family members in one bedroom? Is that adequate? Probably not. So again, if you're a social worker in a school district and you're working with families or individuals that kind of come up with some little red flags, along this line about their living situation, know that you need to work with that family, ask a few more questions, and they may be more than likely eligible for McKinney-Vento services. And that's important because there are more services that can be brought to the families because of this. So again, the shared housing piece we have to look at, and we have to look at economic hardship or similar reasons. Even if there's a fire and they have to move out of the home. I've had that in Winnetka, where I had a family in one of the mega mansions there have a fire and have to move into a motel in another district. The district didn't think they were McKinney-Vento eligible because they were wealthy. Parents were both attorneys and they shouldn't be considered McKinney-Vento. However, they were, because the problem that the family was having was getting the kids to school every day. So you have to look at every case and you have to realize, by this definition, who is McKinney-Vento eligible. And 76% of our McKinney-Vento students are in the doubled up situation. So it's a huge gray area. And that's where we have, the most issues with getting some of the students in school or, identifying them as McKinney-Vento. Okay. So rights and services, Maria, I'm at my 20-minute mark already. Am I good to talk a little bit about this, or should I speed talk like they do in the commercials when they talk about the side effects from drugs?
No, no, I think you're okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So here's what happens. Here's what's important with McKinney-Vento. By the federal and Illinois law, McKinney-Vento students must be allowed to enroll in at least one of the following schools: either the school they last attended before they became homeless, the school they attended when they were last permanently housed, or the school where they're currently staying. Okay, where they're staying with another friend. So it all depends. It is only the parent or the unaccompanied youth or caretakers' decision on what that school is. We can't say, hey, look, you're driving from Chicago, that's way too far, for those kids to be coming back to this school, you got to go to the other school. We can say what's in the best interest of your child. Many times the contention of the law is to let them stay in the school of origin because their friends are there, their teachers are there, there's support for them. It's the only continuity that child has when the rest of that child's life is pretty much up for grabs and just in disarray. So it's so important to have that conversation to decide what the best thing is for school of choice. Sometimes when we have families and students coming to enroll in school, we need to have staff ask them, why, what's changed with your living situation, that you're coming to our school in the middle of the school year, or, next week, or, sometime during the regular registration process. Because many times they may not know what their rights are. Like I gave you the example before with a mom that's newly divorced. She may not know her kids could stay in the same school. She may only think that they can attend where her parents are living or whoever she's staying with are living. So you have to be able to explain those rights to that family. And I do have another handout that probably is important for you to ensure that your clients or your families know about are the educational rights. And we rewrote that so it's pretty much in sixth grade reading level. So all families should be able to, depending on their education, read that document. We also have it available in Spanish and a number of other languages that I will try to get online so that they can be accessed easily. Or you can ask your liaison for it in any language. I do have them available. So that's about it with the school choice, and that's huge, piece of the law that really makes a difference for those children in that family. So then we can talk about transportation. If the parents are having difficulty getting the children back to the school, it is our responsibility in the school district to work with the family to figure out how we can get the students back to school. Depending on the school district, there is a big difference, in how that transportation may take place. When we're closer to the city, we could probably use public transportation, but again, that depends on the age of the student. Cabs are another possibility. Gas cards are possible. I have emergency gas cards. If any of you have families or in situations that they need money right up front to go and try to get their kids to school before we get any transportation in place, just let me know. I also have emergency assistance for clothing and even for some temporary motel stays right now, because with the new funds that we're getting from ARP, we're able to provide some temporary housing, with motel stays. So there's a lot of different ways transportation looks, and it depends on the school district. But guess what the most important thing to remember is? It's got to be based on removing all barriers. So if someone that lives in Elk Grove, the school district decided to do public transportation for the kids to get back from the city, how does that look? That may be 2 or 3 bus transfers. That may be a 3-hour ride to get back to school. That's not going to work because that's a barrier. And I'm not saying Elk Grove does that, because they really don't. But I just wanted to give you an example of, a situation where that type of transportation mode won't work. But there's nothing in the law that says how that transportation should be provided. It just cannot be a barrier. There's also a House bill that I'm not going to talk too much about, but it's a way, if the cost for a school district is more than it would be to help that family stay in the school district, the cost of transportation that is, then we can look at a plan to help them get back in the community by helping them with rent and so on, and the school district will be reimbursed. We have to work with our one of our other homeless agencies to vet the family and to help find an apartment in the area, but then the schools can help provide funding for that family to keep them in the school of origin rather than having them come from Chicago. Some will come from Indiana, some will come from Wisconsin, So when we look at the longer distances, this is a great money saver for the school districts and a lot less duress for the family. So that's pretty exciting too. So school fees, I'm not going to talk about all of these, but another big piece with this is the school fees are waived immediately when a family is McKinney-Vento, and they're automatically put in the free lunch program and breakfast if it's available in the school district. any of the textbook charges, any of the use for school property, any of the technology, that they get, charges for field trips, charges for uniforms or equipment related to a particular class or a sport, which would include cheerleading, charges for supplies related to the classroom, graduation fees for cap and gowns, school record fees, school health service fees, driver's education fees, all should be covered by the school district. So if that's not being done, double check and talk with your liaison to ensure that that's being done. So there are some other ones too, that services that should be included. Certainly social work for the students. I think when a homeless student is identified in the school, they should be seen and talked to by a social worker. I've had some school districts that have said to me, well, the student's well adjusted, doing good in school, so, they probably won't need the social work. Are you kidding me? The trauma of losing everything that you have and having to move in with someone else and having so much going on in your life, those kids need to talk to somebody. And the social worker is a key point for the person to be able to try to get some help, and the family. So any special education needs to be taken care of. Early childhood programs, they should all be aware, that the sooner we start the kids in programs, the better off we are. We even offer through the YWCA, we have a partnership with them for Wheeling and also for Elk Grove for an early childhood 0 to 3 program where we work with the families and meet with the parents by Zoom or in person to talk about all kinds of developmental needs at every age of a child and activities that you could do with them and so on. It's a wonderful program. So make sure we include the 0 to 3 and even 4 and above that should go right into our school districts in some of their early childhood programs. Tutoring should be available for them if they need to catch up because of their homeless situation. Summer school, the same thing. Driver's ed, we talked about before. Even if they need psych services, counseling and support services that they may not be able to get funding for in other ways, Title I Part A can help with that, and the physicals and immunizations. No child should be excluded from school for not having any records or any immunizations. We need to work with them to help get them for them. Phew, okay. Well, that was a lot, wasn't it? So I guess questions might be next. I don't know, Maria. Whatever.
That's fine. I do have one question that I will that I'll ask that came up, and then we will get Stacy ready to come on.
Okay.
So the question is, if the student was attending a private school, do they still have the right to attend that school, even if they do not have the finances to pay for it anymore? Or does this free choice only apply for public schools?
Wow, what a great question. It is only for the public schools. Okay, so, it's any of the public schools in the state of Illinois, not necessarily for private schools to be able to continue the students with the tuition-based enrollment.
Got it. Okay, great. I don't have any other questions popped up for right now. So what we'll do is move on to Stacy's. Tom, that was fantastic. I'm sure a couple other questions will come up as we go through Stacy's presentation. And then, and I'm sure, again, we'll have some more questions. So we'll get those when they come up. So thanks so much, Tom. We really appreciate it. That was really interesting. Our second presenter today is one of my favorite people. Her name is Stacy Page. She attended the University of Iowa and has been working with youth and care for 3 decades. She's been with Shelter Inc., one of my colleagues, for 5 years. as the coordinator for both of our group homes, so the Jennings Home for Girls and our boys group home. Her main objective with the youth in her care is to teach skills and change lives. She advocates for homeless youth in care because it's so important due to the youth needing someone who can assist them and to give them a voice to help to determine their future. And I have to say, knowing Stacy and the work that she does, she's amazing. And so we're very excited to hear from her. So welcome, Stacy.
Thank you, Maria.
I think we're getting your slides up here.
All right, thank you.
Stacey, if you want to just start talking while we get those up.
All right, as Maria stated, we have two group homeless shelters, and one is the Jennings House for Girls, one is the boys, and the ages are 11 to 17. Youth are placed here either through a CCBYS, a comprehensive community-based youth service, or DCFS, or a private placement. Do you want to go to the next one? Okay. So whether there's a family crisis or there's just a time period where they need some time to get services in place, both of the homes provide that time for the family to organize and get done what they need to do. The most important thing is to provide continuity of care. And with the McKinney-Vento Act, we are able to do that. Next slide. So one thing that we always make sure that we let everyone know the minute they're placed here, that all the students are qualified for it. I think the biggest barrier for the parents is that they're unaware of this act. And we need to educate them that it's not going to cost them anything out of pocket, that the school districts have the resources. And with the CCBYSs, they also provide transportation for the youth that may be only placed here 48 to 72 hours. And the other thing is a lot of the youth that come in, they're afraid to say that they're homeless. And so I always want to reassure them, it doesn't matter how you get to school, that is your business. If it's a cab, if it's a smaller bus, whatever the case may be, you're still going to be able to go to school and participate and still follow your education. Extracurricular activities is a big one. A lot of the youth, because of COVID, they weren't able to participate. And right now we're seeing an increase in the youth, whether it be through the clubs, arts, sporting. We have a young man right now who's the manager of the swim team. And so it's really important because then again, it gives them a sense of community, and we don't want to take that away from them. And being in a homeless shelter is not a punishment. And I always try to let them know that as well, because that's important.
Oh, could I just say one thing here? And,
Sure.
and I forgot to mention it when I was talking about this. You know, the kids that are involved with sports and after school activities should also get the transportation, you know, back to their home or to the shelter.
Yeah, the school districts here, they do a late bus and they're very accommodating to help us out. This is the one, the relieving the financial burden. Shelter assists youth with utilizing other money allocated by each school for clothes and essential items from the school store. So one thing that I have found is that each of the schools that we work closely with, they have their school store with the spirit wear. And you still want to feel a part of your community, and they will make sure that the youth that come in, they'll get a hoodie, a pair of the flannel pants or anything like that. Then we also had a young lady that her and her father were living out of their car. And I found out at Hoffman High School, District 211, that they have money allocated for her to get new clothes. And they were able to give me a voucher and to get her a whole new wardrobe, We had another young lady that had been living in a campground. And same thing as well for her. The district took care of her needs. And then also going back to the one young lady living in her car, PAD stepped in and they were able to find her dad housing and then get him a job, and they were able to get their own apartment. So again, they're helping everybody. Sorry. Okay. The McKinney-Vento Act provides the ability for students to stay in their own school, remain part of the community, participate in school activities outside with flexible scheduling, and the continuum of care. I think also on this is that the youth that are being placed right now, they have the ability, like Tom mentioned about the dances. And that was a huge one, like the girls going to prom. We had 2 youth go to homecoming, and understand that their tickets were covered. And then shelter, we made sure, you know, they had clothing options, and just that they're able to participate in that. It's so important with the continuity of care.
Could I just make, I'm sorry, I gotta mention this again. The proms and dances and things are not covered under McKinney-Vento. It's not an allowable expense, but many of our districts will go ahead and help out and pay for things like that. And if any of you ever run into an issue where it's not being paid for or they can't cover it, please let me know and I will find funds for it.
The McKinney-Vento resources are applied immediately. I am able to contact the social work or the dean, and they're fully aware of the act. They work with us very well in setting up transportation. It may take 24 hours to 48, but it is set up. And then if it isn't too far in distance, we provide transportation for the youth to school. And I haven't had any issues with any of the Northwest suburbs in placing or setting up any transportation or making resources available for families.
Well, great. Stacy, thank you so much. I do have a couple questions that have come up that I think could be answered by either Tom or Stacy. Stacy, this one might be better suited for you. What are some of the trauma responses or behaviors that you may see with youth who are going through this type of crisis?
The biggest thing that they identify is shame, and they're embarrassed to say, and so that, you know, affects them in the trauma. And then once we'll discuss it and say again that it's not to be homeless, it happens. And well, lost my screen.
Sorry, I
okay. And that it's not a punishment again to be in the shelter. And I think that's what we always have to start with.
Great, thank you. Another question that came up for both the presenters. Are the schools, and I know Stacy, you mentioned specifically the districts 211 and 54 that you work with, but Tom, maybe some of the other districts, are they well versed on the McKinney-Vento Act, or should we expect to have to advocate for these students? And also for kids with IEPs, how quickly can that student expect to have their IEP implemented in a new school?
Great. Okay, those are good questions. Training is always an issue, and that's why I'm always available for that. And also the McKinney-Vento liaison in the school district should be providing that training. It's not being, I would say not all staff are trained as they should be. And that's something we're working on. We are actually meeting with the Illinois State Board and one of our representatives, Representative Mussman, and another group of advocates tomorrow to talk about the training issues so that we have a little bit more push from from the state board and possibly legislation to ensure that all staff members are trained. But please, everyone should always be an advocate for the students, because there's always someone that may not know the law specifically, and you know the law, so you should be there to advocate for those students also. The second one about special ed. Students are to be enrolled immediately and services started comparable to any other student, that comes into the school. So it's there's no barriers. It's a level playing field. In high schools, a lot of times there may be outstanding fees or other reasons that the transcripts are not sent over, but you can use the unofficial transcripts or placement tests to get the student in place until the rest of that is taken care of. By the way, school districts should not prevent transcripts because of outstanding fees from a prior school district. And if that does happen, please let me know, and I will work with that school district. When someone becomes McKinney-Vento eligible, obviously they couldn't pay for their school fees in the previous school. So did that
Great.
answer the questions?
I think so, yes. The ages for to be eligible for the McKinney-Vento Act, is that kindergarten through 12th grade?
It's from 0 through 12.
0 through 12. Okay, perfect. What
And
about,
I
so the
just
question,
wanted to mention with that too, legislation was just passed that I worked with the Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness last year to have a McKinney-Vento liaison at the college, junior college and university level. So that's just getting underway now, so there'll be someone like we have in all of our school districts be that advocate for our homeless students that are going to college.
great. That actually was one of the questions that came up, is what about what resources are there for college students?
Can I say one more thing too?
Mhm.
A program that we're working on this year through a grant that I'm just getting underway is a careers to education program for students at the high school level, where we work on planning a future for the students or unaccompanied youth once they graduate from high school. Not everybody is college bound, so we want to work with a lot of our other unions and different groups to develop skills in fields that may not be college-bound fields, but ones where the students will be able to have the skills and possibly some internships before they leave high schools so that they can launch into a career. And this, we're looking at it as a 4-year planning for a student from the time they enter high school to being able to have a career once they get out, if they're not college-bound.
Great, thank you. Well, if there's any last minute questions, let us know. I don't have anything else in the Q&A. So I will kind of put Stacy and Dr. Bookler's emails up here if you have questions. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, especially Tom. Thank you. And Stacy, I know how busy everyone is today. So I just want to say how grateful we are for your great presentations. As I mentioned earlier, we will send everyone a link to this recording and a certificate for your CEU credits if you gave us your CEU, your license number. We'll also be sending, we'll also keep an eye out for announcements from when we'll host our next community education series webinar sometime in the next year. And so we look forward to seeing you again and with our continued collaboration. In the meantime, please reach out to us at any time. We're happy to help. This is working with these families and youth who are in crisis is definitely a team effort. And as you heard through these presentations, there's none of these services would be would be provided without the collaboration of a lot of our community agencies and schools. So thank you again for being with us today. And thank you again, Tom and Stacy. And we hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Great. Thank you for having me on today.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Take care, everyone.